I've been waiting 17 years for today.
Nickelodeon was kid everything. And this is when Dan Schneider arrives.
Dan Schneider, Nickelodeon's king of kids, or something much darker. He made your childhood. Drake and Josh, iCarly, Zoey 101, Victorious. His shows shaped a generation. Quirky humor, unforgettable theme songs, and characters we still quote today. But behind the slime and the laughs were foot fetishes, lawsuits, and a culture of silence. This isn't just tabloid drama. This is the story Nickelodeon hoped you'd never hear. Dan Schneider, hailed as the king of kids' TV, or the predator who hid in plain sight, the truth is darker than you think. Chapter 1. The Rise of Dan Schneider. Before the controversy, there was the rise. Dan Schneider started as an actor, a chubby sidekick on 80s sitcoms like Head of the Class. But behind the scenes, he was watching, learning, and building something bigger. By the early 2000s, he became Nickelodeon's secret weapon, the man behind hit after hit. All that, The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, iCarly, Zoey 101, Victorious. He wasn't just making shows, he was shaping the network. Chapter 2. The Foot Obsession. This isn't a rumor, it's on camera. Dan Schneider had a thing, and it showed up again and again, a fixation with feet. Feet being tickled, licked, drawn on. Characters sticking toes in their mouths. Episodes where the camera lingers, a little too long, on bare soles. It wasn't subtle, it was everywhere. iCarly once asked fans to send pictures of their feet, and they did. Victorious had a scene where Ariana Grande poured ketchup on her feet and ate it. Chapter 3. The Power Dynamic. Dan Schneider wasn't just a showrunner, he was a kingmaker. Ariana Grande, Miranda Cosgrove, Victoria Justice, Josh Peck, all launched into stardom from his sets, but with that power came absolute control. Dan approved every script, every joke, every costume. And when it came to the actresses, he often worked with them alone. No parents, no guardian, no other adults in the room. Former writers told the New York Times that Dan's environment was hostile and high pressure. Others went further, creepy, abusive. If you questioned him, one writer said, you were fired immediately. Behind the glitzy sets were scared kids, terrified of stepping out of line. Some later described feeling manipulated, overworked, and silenced. And in Hollywood, when a man brings in millions, nobody asks why the children seem so anxious. Chapter 4. Amanda Bynes and Mental Health. Amanda Bynes was a Nickelodeon supernova. From All That to The Amanda Show, she was the face of comedy for a generation. Smart, fast, brilliant, she was the one. But by 2010, her story changed. She spiraled, public breakdowns, mugshots, hospitalizations. She tweeted, "I wanted Dan Schneider to apologize to me publicly." Then, silence. The media painted her as unstable. Chapter 5. The Settlement. In March 2018, something strange happened. Nickelodeon suddenly announced that Dan Schneider was parting ways with the network. No statement, no warning, no accountability. Then came the reports. Dan was paid $7 million to leave quietly. Let that sink in. No charges, no lawsuit, just a massive payday. Why pay that much to a man facing no legal claims? Insiders say it was hush money, an internal cleaning, a way to shut it all down before it exploded. Chapter 6. Quiet Survivors. In 2021, the docuseries Quiet on Set sent shockwaves across the internet. For the first time, former child stars and crew members broke the silence. They talked about manipulation, screaming matches, inappropriate jokes, being sexualized as minors. No one directly accused Dan Schneider of criminal behavior, but every story, every uncomfortable detail, pointed back to the world he built. A culture where boundaries didn't exist, where kids were exploited, and where adults looked away. Fans went back and rewatched old episodes, and what once seemed like goofy humor felt wrong, predatory, painful. Why didn't anyone speak up sooner? Because fame protects predators, and silence keeps the money flowing. Chapter 7. The Industry Cover-Up. Dan Schneider isn't an isolated case. He's part of a much bigger, far more disturbing pattern. A pattern that Hollywood has repeated for decades. Harvey Weinstein, Bryan Singer, Jeffrey Epstein, different names, different industries, same playbook. These weren't men who operated in the shadows. They worked in the open, in studios, on red carpets, at elite parties. They were protected by the very institutions that should have stopped them. Why? Because they were valuable. Because they made people rich. Because in Hollywood, power isn't measured in morality, it's measured in money. And when children are involved, the stakes skyrocket. The victims are more vulnerable, the damage runs deeper, and the cover-ups become airtight. Whispers become warnings. Warnings become rumors, and when the rumors get too loud, there's a payout, a non-disclosure agreement, a forced exit wrapped in PR spin. Nickelodeon has never issued a formal apology. Not to the parents, not to the actors, not to the fans who grew up unknowingly watching trauma unfold in real time. Dan Schneider? He's still out there, still pitching new shows, still knocking on the same doors that once made him untouchable. And in some rooms, he's welcomed back in. Because the machine, it doesn't stop for victims. It doesn't slow down for survivors. It keeps spinning, fueled by ratings, merch, and silence. And the scariest part? It will keep spinning until someone or something forces it to stop. Whether that's the truth, whether that's a reckoning, or whether that's people like you refusing to look the other way. The entertainment industry doesn't protect the innocent. It protects its assets. And the moment someone threatens the brand, they're erased, but those harmed, they're left to pick up the pieces alone. The dark side of fame. Dan Schneider gave us the shows we loved. He was the mastermind behind the laughs, the friendships, and the unforgettable lines that defined a generation. He built worlds that felt like home, after school, on weekends, during summer breaks. To millions of kids, his shows were more than entertainment. They were comfortable, they were culture. But behind the curtain, he built something else. A toxic empire. One where rules were bent, boundaries were broken, and no one dared to speak up. Where children were expected to be professional, while the adults behaved like anything but. For years, whispers echoed through sound stages and writers' rooms. Warnings were raised, red flags were waved, but Hollywood didn't just look away. It handed him the keys. The ratings were too high. The merch sold too well. And so, the machine kept turning. When the truth became too loud to ignore, they didn't fire him. They didn't investigate. They paid him $7 million to disappear. No accountability, no apology, just a handshake and silence. But the damage? That doesn't vanish with a check. It lingers. In therapy sessions, in broken relationships, in the careers that never were, and in the questions that still go unanswered. This isn't just about Dan Schneider. It's about the system that let him thrive. It's about the executives who measured worth in ratings, not in safety. It's about the young people who trusted the adults around them and failed. This is the dark side of fame, where childhood is a product, where silence is currency, and where predators hide behind applause. And it's not over. Not until the industry stops protecting its stars and starts protecting its children. Subscribe to uncover what entertainment doesn't want you to see. Because sometimes, the real horror isn't in the script. It's what happens when the cameras stop rolling. The cameras stop rolling.